As the saying goes, there's nothing quite like the feel of a suit tailored to a person. And for watches, a leather watch strap is in the similar vein, but just like anything that is tailored or bespoke, it can come at a great cost. And that was a problem our next guest was trying to address. To him, everyone deserves and should be able to afford an original custom leather watch strap. His name is Eric. He goes by the handle EA8 or EA Leather Goods on Instagram. He is a craftsman of leather and a friend of ours in the Watchfam. You've tuned into the Bellingham podcast miniseries, The Watchfam, brought to you by The Analog Explorer. Read about my analog manifesto through my photography and my passions of travel and watches, in print or now as a digital magazine at theanalogexplorer.com. Now, beyond Eric's alter ego of EA8, he is also an unapologetic Seiko fanboy. And it's interesting because he also tinkers. He's a modder. He likes to modify Seiko watches and make them just as custom or maybe even bespoke as the very leather watch straps that he creates for other people in the watch fam. But it's funny, he came into watch collecting and leather craft from two separate paths. Like so many of us, he remembers his father's watch, and there's a story there that brought him into watch collecting. But it was his pursuit to make a better wallet, or, well, save money on making a wallet, that really drew him into leathercraft. And when those two separate life paths joined, it opened up the opportunity for him to get his alter ego of EA8. And in that alter ego, we're able to work with him just like a tailor, having a custom watch strap created for any of us that's uniquely ours and reflects our personality or even our alter egos with our watches. But more importantly, we have something crafted for us and we know exactly where it came from and who made it. But still, why watches? Rumor has it you do leather work, right?
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing, that I my alter ego, EA Leather Goods. Yeah, I do leather stuffs.
So how long have you been doing that for?
Well, watch straps recently, maybe last 2 years, I've been honing my skills in that. Leather goods in general started around 2012 when, as all guys have, the wallet that just is in tatters, won't hold anything anymore. It's probably overstuffed with stuff we don't need because that's where you collect all your receipts and cards and all that stuff. And it died. It no longer would hold anything. So being getting kind of into the EDC thing, I saw a lot of minimalist wallets online and I saw what they were made of. And I'm like, that's not a lot to that wallet. I think I could make a wallet. And that's kind of how I went down the rabbit hole with leather goods. I had an ice pick, a utility knife, an old cutting board, some thread that I picked up from a sewing store. I think it was Joann's Fabric.
Yeah.
And then a pack of random needles that you get all sizes. And I just kind of try to mimic what I saw with some pleather that I picked up a yard of. I think the whole kit cost me like $15. That's how I drew it out. I designed it and I drew it out and it was terrible. it wouldn't hold money. It was too small to fit credit cards. So off to the internets I went. Since then, I never interned at a leather shop, which would be pretty awesome. Don't know any other guys that do leather. I just kind of started raw and saw what I could find on the internet and got some ideas and sucked it up and ordered some good leather. And there it is. I started with wallets. Then I went to holsters, firearms, field notebooks. And then I got a different position at the job I have and I needed to dress a little bit nicer. And I'm like, well, I like watches. For some reason, I've always loved watches. And so I'm like, I think I can make like a leather strap. That would be kind of cool. And I made a terrible leather NATO strap. It was awful, but I loved it because I made it and I didn't know anybody else that had anything like that because I didn't know anything about watch straps. So then I kind of started searching that. And here I am now with a bunch of orders that I don't feel I turn out fast enough, but that's kind of the nature of the thing. I do this part-time. in my basement, my workshop, when I can sneak a couple hours in and on my days off, which I rarely have.
Well, dude, Chris and I are big fans, and here's the cool thing about you, and this is where I was starting off with is like I gravitated towards your Instagram account because I was building a watch for my son way long ago, and you left like one of the nicest comments. You were just like, "Dude, just hang in there, man. Like you'll figure it out. Hang in there and stuff." I was like, "Who is this guy?" So I looked it up. And what drew me to your account was every so often, whenever you're working in your shop, you like live stream, like, this is how I'm doing stuff and this is what I'm working on. Like, so theoretically, somebody who puts in an order with you literally could watch you as the artisan make what they ordered, right?
Exactly. Yeah. My idea for this, when Kaz from Two Broke Watch Snobs and I had a couple of conversations with Terry from Toxic Tomatoes, they're like, just start doing it, and a couple other guys in this, the Watchfam. Yeah, if you're making them, man, people like what you have, start selling them. I wanted to keep the prices down, and I wanted to make leather straps specifically for what the customer had their idea for. So the process is you contact me, and then we'll go back and forth over emails, mostly Instagram messages, and we'll nail down exactly what you're looking for in a watch strap, specific to your wrist size, what stitching, what style. If I can source the leather that you have in mind, I'll go out and get it. I have a ton of leather on hand. Stitching color, what color, what kind of buckle you want. Because with watches, that we form this kind of emotional thing with watches. And when you have a watch that you love because of various reasons, you put memories into it. The last step there is, completely make it yours and get a watch strap that you help create. I make it, but really the customer is the one that came up with the idea, and that's what they wanted for that watch or multiple watches.
So I've dabbled into leatherworking. Like I've shot you some of my, I work hard for my failed attempts. I'd like to let you know, but
Hey, yeah,
I try, like, and I was kind of in the same vein where I had a little bit of exposure growing up because my family was into horses growing up. So dealt around with tack, you gotta fix it up every so often. Like that was, I knew my way around a leather hole punch. That was about as good as I was. Yeah, much like yourself. Like I needed a leather NATO because honestly, it was more financial than anything else. Like I don't have a lot of money for Hodinkee straps, but
sure,
they're good quality and stuff. But I thought to myself, I know my way around a hole punch. I can cut something out. And I was building the PNW 001, and I was like, gosh, that's really my personality. I want that folded into my watch, la la la. And I worked hard for my my rough attempt at a strap, but you know what? Like there's something romantic or something, just I don't know, that brings the whole wrist presence of a watch with a really solid, trusty and comfortable strap.
Yeah, and even I mean, I mess up constantly. I have shoe boxes full of straps that didn't make it because for some reason or other, something wasn't working out. But even the ugly ones, even my prototypes, I still wear them because you know what, I made that strap. That's my strap.
Yeah.
So and a lot like watches, buy, collect what you want, wear what you like, and who cares what anybody thinks? Ugly strap or not. I mean, if somebody has like pink bun straps with alligator print, that's cool. I mean, if you want to wear that, that's on you. I got nothing to say about that. You know what? I'll make one for you also.
I was gonna say, have you made one?
Not that, but I am in the process of working with somebody to make a bun strap for a watch that's
cool.
special to her. So it's nothing I would wear, but
Yeah.
you know what? I'm really excited about making this piece because it's something that I haven't made before. So that's where I kind of get the excitement from, that and giving somebody exactly what they wanted.
Oh man, that is killer and cool on her for like going full custom like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really tiny watch. I think it's like 34 millimeters across, early 1900s.
Oh wow.
It's cool. And she's a horse person also, like you said, that how you kind of your roots come from. So I'm using something more along the lines of a Rains type color, like more of a honey color, but it's made out of a good sturdy strap material. So
Oh cool.
it'll be pretty neat. We'll see how it turns out. Hopefully she likes it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you working on it on your Instagram feed, dude. That sounds cool. So I got to ask you, from one watch aficionado to another, And I know it's a hard question, and I know it's going to be a long answer. So why watches?
It started for me. My dad, who was an iron worker. I grew up West Coast, so he was a ship fitter, iron worker, and he always had these beat up Casio, like the digital Casios, and it was full of metal pieces that are stuck to the face, stuff like that. And growing up, you see your father and you want to be like that. So I eventually, when I was about 6 or 7, talked him into buying me an old retro, I guess retro now, Casio, of like I forget which model it was, a DW something. And it started there. And from that, growing up in the 80s and 90s, it went to swatches, all the really cool pink and purple and lime green colors.
Yeah, swatches were really the Pokemon of our era, man. You got to collect them all, right?
You had to have a lot of swatches and then jam shorts and really bright colors and pink grip tape on your skateboard. And then on the flip side of that, James Bond. I watched every single James Bond I could get a hold of when I was younger. And then from that, it was Omega. And then I saw my first Speedmaster, and that was it. That's I went from there. And then I got older and got a little bit more financially stable, and here I am with watches now.
I got to know, who's your favorite Bond?
The very first one, Sean Connery.
Sean Connery.
Yeah. I mean, because those are the best. Those old ones. I mean, they're so culturally insensitive now. It's just, yeah. But he was the original James Bond, and and I really dig the new ones too. So for different reasons, just because coming from an art background, the cinematography that goes into some of them, it's pretty great. So
no, totally. I love Dr. No. I love the tune, the Three Blind Mice tune in the beginning of Dr.
In the
No.
beginning, when they're cruising through the streets there, and then they shoot that guy up in the car.
Yeah. Okay, well there is that. But no, if Connery is your favorite Bond, is Connery's sub your favorite Bond watch?
It isn't. I like Rolex as much as the next guy, but I don't really get into the whole Rolex Submariner thing. My favorite watch is the Seamaster that what's his name on the last one wore. That's a great looking watch. I've seen it in person. It's really, it's just plain, but it's got everything you need in it. So
yeah, are you talking about the Daniel Craig, the
Spectre?
the
Daniel Craig, the Spectre one.
Yeah, that one's cool because that one also has a 12-hour bezel, doesn't it?
I believe so. I'm not gonna say it does, but I think so.
Yeah. No, that's a killer piece. So between leather and between an affinity for James Bond, where else? How else did watches kind of craft you to where you're at now? I mean, are you rocking a Speedmaster on your wrist right now with an EA8 strap?
No, I'm not making that much in straps. I am unapologetic Seiko fanboy. I really really love Seiko. I have a lot of them, 17, and I
small collection.
Yeah, and a lot of SKXs. There's a lot of different versions of SKX out there, and 47. But I have 4. Yeah, that's it. I'm wearing a turtle right now, on an EA leather, good strap that is completely unfinished and not backed. Because usually I back my straps with a vegetable tan, a nice natural color veg tan that'll patina over time. But for myself, I don't do that. I don't finish the sides. I kind of stitch them together and punch 2 holes in it, depending on how my wrist is going to swell, and then there it is.
Cool.
It takes me 45 minutes to make a strap for myself, and about 7 hours to make a strap for somebody else. So, yeah.
An artisanal strap right there. That is awesome, dude.
Yeah, there's a and that's a lot of the reason I do those videos, because I want people to see what they're buying. I keep my prices low. I'm not making any money really. I'm doing it because I think there needs to be somebody out there that's doing it because I think everybody should have a good custom strap and not have to spend $200, $165 on something, and they never get to meet the person that makes it. They never get a conversation with them. You can't call that person up and say, "Hey, this stitch busted." With my straps, you're paying what, 65 right now for my straps, and you have a problem with your strap, send it back. You know what? Keep it. I'll make you another one. I've done that a couple times because something went wrong. Because that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be with a lot of things. You know, buy locally, support smaller businesses, get to know who you're dealing with. You know, it just makes, it seems to me that we're missing a lot of that now with social media and the internet. It's bringing people too far into their cells and they're not communicating with each other anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what Chris and I usually hit on the show, pretty routinely. I mean, we're big in supporting local and supporting artisans, creating stuff, you know, handcrafted, sourced in America, made in America. I mean, that has been lacking for quite some time.
Yeah, I think it is. I think we need to get out and meet our neighbors more. I mean, I lived in cities a long time, and you know, it every neighborhood, every block, it's its own little town, little neighborhood, you know. And with a lot of us living in big urban environments, you gotta look out for each other, and you gotta know who you're living with and living around. And it's nice to know where the food came from, or where, you know, where the seamstress is at, or who can fix my shoes, you know, or the mechanic down the street.
Actually, that's kind of a good analogy. Like, we need to know our neighbor, and that's kind of how this miniseries kind of developed. Is, you know, with the Watchfam, you know, we're all one big family in this community of Watchville, as it were, and kind of getting out and knowing your neighbors and stuff. And that's, again, that's kind of how I found out about you. Is, you know, you kind of reached out and left some nice words when I was at probably my most breaking point with that ding dong watch.
It was the keyless. You had a keyless issue
Yeah.
on 20. Which edit do you have in there?
It's a Salida
Oh,
SW200.
still, it's a keyless
Yeah.
issue, and
Yeah.
keyless issues are the bane of my tinkering existence.
I still have nightmares of that thing. But yeah, that leads me into my next point. Is like, you're also a modder tinkerer yourself. Like, what do you do with the building and deconstructing and modding of watches?
That mostly started because I can't leave well enough alone. I had a Hamilton. It had some. It was a field khaki. It had a 2836 2 in it, because that's the right movement you want to start messing around with when you
Right.
start out. And there was a speck of dust on the inside of the. I could see it. Nobody else could. I take a lot of micro shots, and there it was, big as a rock. So I'm like, you know what? I can do this. I can take a stem off. I've replaced crystals before, so I pulled the stem out, pulled the movement out, got it all cleaned up, put it back in there, jammed the crown back in there, and the crown would not stay inside,
Oh
um,
no.
because the keyless had fallen apart. And
Right.
there's little gears, they fell. So I'm like, well, I can go through the backside, not knowing you have to go through the front side on that movement. So I got on the watch family, and I'm like, hey, I've got this issue, and so many people like, this is what you need to do, these are the parts you need. One guy who ended up becoming a really good friend of mine, goes by the name of Wristmass, Mark, who also makes great straps, by the way, said, hey, I've got that part, I'll send it to you. And that's kind of what I love about the watch fam. You know, for the most part, everybody's really positive, everybody's really supportive.
Yeah.
So I got into tinkering and modding with that, and I'm like, well, you know what? Let's start doing that with a couple SKXs. So, you know, I pulled out the guts on SKS. It has that 7S movement in there, and I put a 4R, or the NH36 is
Mm-hmm.
the generic one. Stuck that in there, did a couple bezel changes, kind of just went from there. I mean, if you got to go into it knowing I might mess this up, and I
Yeah.
might need to buy a different watch. So if you keep that in mind and take pictures of everything you're doing, one screw out, take a picture, another screw out, take a picture, you can kind of keep it on track. And then there's a ton of people out there that are willing to help you. I mean, there's forums, there's other watchmakers, other modders out there, and everybody's really open,
Yeah.
um, with being helpful. That's kind of how I got into that, just because I couldn't leave one speck of dust alone.
I know, it's funny when you talk to somebody who's into watches, it's funny, the littlest things that just are like little needles in the back of our brain that we know are there, and yet everybody else is totally oblivious to it. They're just like, whatever, nice watch. But to us, it's like, can you not see
Yeah,
the
you not see that? Yeah,
yeah.
no, yeah, I can beat up an SKX and destroy the crystal, and there's scrapes on it, and the bezel's all faded. and the watch looks like I've been opening bottles with it. But if there's one tiny bit of dust on that dial, it'll freak me out. So
And that's the other funny thing is that we all have different ticks when it comes to it. Like some people are like, how can you change the bezel out? And it's like, oh, why not?
yeah, pop the thing off with a not a screwdriver, or probably a butter knife would be better. And yeah, you got to go into it thinking, you know what, it might break, but I'm going to learn something. You learn from breaking stuff. I've broken enough stuff.
So, and if I recall on your Instagram, you recently just got done doing a build on an SKX 173.
Yeah, the 173, it's just like the 007, except it has rectangular markers. And I guess they call it a meatball second hand. It's got unlike the SKX that has the round part at the bottom of the second hand, on the long part of the second hand, it has the little round luminous dot. And there's a difference at the 12 o'clock marker. But yeah, I just modded that. I put a stainless steel Yoboki's 12-hour bezel on it, and ripped the guts out and put the NH movement in there and a new crown. I might do a new crystal. I'm not sure. I kind of like banged up crystals. It kind of shows a little use.
I just got done doing a rebuild on an SKX 031, and that was a labor of love just trying to get the parts for it. But man, I have fallen in love with the NH36. I think that movement is, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the 7S26, but just, the NH36 just feels like it's a grown up version of it. It's great.
It is. And there's theories out there that that movement's gonna replace the 7S movement. You're seeing now in the Seiko 5 sports lines, they're putting that NH36 movement in a few of them. Hopefully, I mean, that'd be really neat. It would stop me from having to buy the movements online all the time and switch them out with my SKXs. But we'll see. I think Seiko's, they're shifting. They're shifting gears. They're putting. It's like all the movements are taking a step up. Mm-hmm. So that'll be pretty neat to see what comes out in the next year, especially with Bezel coming around the corner. Not like Seiko cares. They kind of just make watches and put them out there and don't really tell anybody about it. And then all of a sudden you see them and you're like, where'd this come from? And Seiko just kind of giggles and goes back to work. So
yeah, that is true. But I mean, they've had great strides. I mean, they spun off Grand Seiko. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're much like myself. Like I unapologetically love Seiko and kind of feel like they don't, in some circles, they don't get the respect that they duly deserve. What do you forecast in the next 10 years for the Big S? Do you feel like Seiko's gonna? There's some people that have conspiracy theories that they're gonna go totally up market and kind of gyp the enthusiast. I mean, what do you feel?
I think that they're on this thing now. Like recently we've seen the leaks of the new one coming out that probably going to be out at Bezel, the Captain Willard Apocalypse Now. 71 or 6105, and just like last year they did the same thing. It's probably going to run a couple $1,000, but then they're going to do a prospects line of it that's going to run under $1,000. That won't be completely the same as the Willard watch, but it'll be same enough. They're probably going to do that for a while. Reissue. It's easy for a lot of companies to reissue, but unlike a lot of companies, Seiko does the almost 1-for-1 reissue, and then they will do the sub 1K version of it.
The modern reinterpretation.
Yeah, so if you can't afford, $3,000 for the really, really nice one, you can go a little bit down market and spend less, and then when it hits gray market, it'll be around 4 or 5.
Yeah, mortal pricing.
Yeah, regular guys. Even though, man, that's still. I mean, you're talking to a guy that decided he wanted to make a wallet for himself because he didn't want to spend $85 on 2 pieces of leather. That's still a lot of. Yeah, it's still a lot of money. $400 or $500. Not in the grand scheme of things. I think we get jaded when we get into the watch fam, when we see $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 mid-level watches from some of these Swiss companies. But then we turn around and we see a $3,000 Seiko and we're like, oh, I'm not going to spend $3,000 for a Seiko.
Yeah, that's the part that drives me nuts.
It just doesn't make sense how you justify spending $5,000 for a Swiss watch, but you'll balk at a $3,000 Japanese watch that has, just as much technical value. The finishing is great on that line. It's kind of weird, and it shouldn't be that way, but it is, and it probably always will be. So
Yeah, and I kind of feel like especially the SKXs, man. That I mean, they were ISO. Well, most of them were ISO certified and rated. Kind of putting that on its head, like looking at the past, like obviously Rolex and the Submariner and even Blancpain and all of the predecessors to it, even the Submariner. Watches were a tool. And do you feel like in this digital age, like the watch is a tool, or are we kind of in the watch fam just kind of all kind of tooting our own horns of like, it's the greatest thing. Like, where do you feel watches really have a place in today's culture and society?
I'd like to say that watches were necessary now. Obviously, they're not. Everybody has a cell phone. I mean, they give cell phones away on street corners now, so you're always gonna know what time it is. But I use a watch every day. I try to keep my cell phone out of my hand as much as possible. If I need to know the time, I need to know it right now. I don't want to fish around in my pocket. I want to look at my wrist and then go on with my life. I don't know. I don't know where watches are going. They'll always be there. For years, everybody's saying there needs to be a market correction with prices. That's not going to happen because they're priced at what people will spend. And that's what it comes down to. A Rolex is $8,000 for a Submariner because people are going to spend $8,000 for it. Just like an SKX is 220, and people will buy it every single time. So I don't know. I don't see it as a status symbol because where I work, not many people wear automatic watches. It's all G-Shocks and the Apple Watch. And I mean, that's cool. If that's what you like, that's what you like. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I'm always going to like watches. My kids are getting into watches.
Oh, cool.
My watch obsession is rubbing off on a couple guys that I work with. They're getting into watches. Maybe, hopefully, I'm patient zero at my work, and we all become watch fanatics. But watches are watches. You don't necessarily need them, but man, they're super cool. I'm always gonna like them.
How many watches do you have in your collection?
36 or 7.
Wow. And
Yeah.
are they all getting wrist time, or are you somebody who like sees a piece as an investment?
No, you don't invest in watches. I buy watches because I think they're cool. Most of that, it sounds like a lot of watches, but I have been really lucky on finding older Seikos. I have a lot. Like I said, I have 17 Seiko watches, and most of them are from 70s, 80s, before people got really crazy into finding like the 6110 or 6119s. You could pick them up for $10,
Yeah.
no problem on eBay. And sometimes you get a dud,
Yeah.
and that just means you got to go find parts, and that's kind of the fun of the game. I mostly Seikos. A lot of I've been thinking the last couple of years to pay more attention to the smaller guys. I don't like the word micro brands because I've talked to a couple guys that own these companies, and in particular, Notice watches. Those are two really cool dudes, and they really like what they're doing, and they're doing it because that's their passion. So that's not a micro brand. That's just two guys that started a company, and they make small runs of watches. But I don't know, micro brand, maybe boutique, or maybe it's just two guys that like to make watches and are selling them to people for a good price, and they're quality watches. So I've been paying attention to those.
Yeah.
Those guys. Orion watches. I have one of his. Nick's great watch, solid.
Yeah,
Nick's a
Nick.
good dude. A lot of his beginnings in modding, I watched those videos and read those posts on his blog to kind of get me over the hump. Yeah,
Same here.
I think a lot of guys that do Seiko found their way to his blog. Now he's back over in Philadelphia doing the Orion thing, and good on him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a lot of watches, but I wear them all. Some I don't wear as much as others. I'll go to work. I'll put on a watch when I go to work. I'll come home. Chances are I'm throwing an SKX on my wrist because it's my favorite watch.
To kind of close it out, I kind of wanted to hit you because you do have a larger collection. I mean, By no means is it small. By no means is it large. Yeah. I mean, it's not John Mayer large. I mean, do you have a specific piece or a couple of pieces in that, like, if everything were to, because you were patient zero, let's say everybody got zombified, right? You don't turn into a zombie. Let's say you had to let go of all but one or all but two pieces. Like, is there a watch in particular that, like, you will take to the grave, as it were, that has, like, so much sentimental value?
There are three. There's my XKX that I've had forever. It's been through multiple hikes. Colorado, went hiking with it. Locally where I live, there are great nature trails everywhere. Mountain biking, I go mountain biking with it all the time. And then both my grandfather's watches. I have my one of my grandfathers worked for A.G. Edwards for 30 years. I got his retirement watch when he passed. And then my other grandfather, who was very practical, very humble guy, needed a watch that told the time that he didn't have to whine or change batteries for. So he had a solar Seiko, and I got that. And I don't wear either of them because I break everything I touch. So they stay in the watch box right next to each other, and I look at them and I'll put them on every once in a while, but I won't wear them out. But the house is on fire and the zombies are attacking. I'm grabbing those three watches. Might grab the kids and the wife on the way out too. But definitely my three dogs, we're getting in the truck and we're getting out. So yeah.
Got it. The watches, the kid and the wife, and then the dog.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then the dogs. Yeah. In that order.
Well, if somebody wanted to check out all of your awesome EA8 awesomeness.
So you hit me up on Instagram, EA8 or at EA Leather Goods. I do my best to respond as fast as I can. But like I said, I got a full-time job and then I do this on the side. So
thanks so much for being on the show.
Dude, I appreciate it. I love your podcast.
That wraps up this special edition of the Bellingham Podcast. Thank you again so much for listening to us, rating us, reviewing us, wherever you like to get your podcast. Remember, if you're in the Bellingham area, you might be listening to us on KMRE 102.3 FM, Low Power. Community radio here in the heart of the city by the Salish Sea. And also remember that this mini-series is brought to you by The Analog Explorer. Find out more about my analog manifesto through my photography, my love of travel, and of course, my tick for watches. You can read about it in a digital magazine or in print at theanalogexplorer.com. Thank you again so much for tuning in. I'm AJ Barce, and we will see you next week.